One of the biggest challenges that's seen in the info product space, which I'll address today, is conversion of leads. See, every single YouTube video that I've seen, and every single expert or massive scaler that I've seen always just speaks about one thing, which is like more leads, cost per acquisition, like how much money do I spend to get a single lead? And to me, the big issue is like most people actually don't look at the efficiency behind it. So to give you some context, one of our clients is doing roughly over a million, if not $2 million a month off of paid media. And, I had this interesting conversation with him where I asked him, I was like, hey, how many calls are you booking per month with a VSL funnel right now to hit those, let's say $1 million a month? And what he's told me was absolutely like crazy to me because I don't play in that world. And it was that basically he was booking roughly 2,000 to 2,500 calls per month, whether that be triage or like regular sales calls, in order to hit that $1 million month, which means to hit like 2 million a month, he needs like anywhere between 4 to 5,000 calls every single month. Now, even after speaking to other people in this space, such as Jeremy Haynes, he told me that it probably takes like 1,200 to 1,800 depending on the client, which to me still is absolutely crazy because when I looked at our data, we historically speaking only needed between 6 to 700 calls per month to take clients to that $1 million month organically. And so in today's video, I want to break down to you guys the three-headed dragon that we've developed to maximize lead conversion, because that is the one metric I think a lot of people underestimate, right? It's easy to always look for ways to get more leads, for ways to kind of get your conversion rates up. But the hard part I find is how can you actually be efficient? How can you make sure that out of 100 leads or 1,000 leads, you're converting the most amount of people? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the good old iPad and I'm going to start breaking down to you guys like on the organic side and generally speaking, where there's lead leakages and how to be as efficient as possible. And then last but not least, the three-headed dragon we've developed that actually maximizes that lead push. Okay. So again, when you look on a very traditional level, right, you would see, let's say on a VSL ad, you would obviously have like the ad, right? From there, you go to like a landing page. And then obviously on a landing page perspective, right, you have like the maybe you do the opt-in, if that at all. And then you have like call, right? And so essentially, like what happens is like obviously like you have leakage here, you have leakage here, and then you have like a big leakage here. And then obviously from here, they either like they show or they no show, right? And then from there, it's just whatever. And so there's massive leakage in different areas. And the hard part is this: if somebody has a leakage on that front, right, you can't really retarget. Like every time you interact with them costs you money. So like if they don't do that, then you have like retargeting ads, and then that's gonna cost you money. Okay. And then again, if you have someone opt in but not book a call, like you have an issue, again, same thing here, that goes back into the retargeting ads. And then if you have someone that opts in but doesn't book a call, that's going to be like an SDR maybe calling them, or text or email. But in the grand scheme of things, like all of those interactions, they cost you money, or they're like very non-scalable things, right? Because like in some way or another, you're going to pay money to target those people. And so there's massive leakages because it's going to be more costly, right? Which means like your cost per acquisition or your cost per booked call, over time, they're naturally going to raise. And obviously, once they haven't been closed, they just kind of die off, right? So if here they buy and they don't buy, they show up, they don't buy, or they no show and obviously therefore don't buy, they just basically like death. They're dead. And so the issue with that is like you really want to get to a point where you can actually have this zone here, especially where you can revive those leads. Okay. Now, when you look at it from an organic perspective, right? Let's say you have a person here. You have Freddie the follower. Okay. And Freddie sees your content. Maybe it might be a reel, might be a thread, might be just a shout out creative or like some other form of like growth. And they will, oh, cool. I'm gonna jump on your profile. And so on the profile, and then obviously over there, usually if you do a good job, they click the follow button, right? Yes, you will have the first leakage in the contents to follower conversion, but that's something that is imperfect as ads to landing page, right? And so in the best case, the more they see your content, right, which like honestly, that doesn't really cost you anything per se to do that. And if so, it's like pennies on the dollar. You can actually increase the likelihood that they click on the profile over time. It's just a familiarity bias. And so over there, your followers are there. And then once they follow you, they see your content every single day, right? Because they obviously see the feed content, they see the story content, and eventually it's only a matter of time until from here, they end up inside of your DMs, right? Now, this is where most people go wrong. Most people have a very linear approach. So there's really two options. So most people, what they do is they then go, okay, cool, from DMs, they either push them to one of two places, which is A, like a webinar or like some form of like VSL, or B, they just go for the call, right? Which is like DM setting, book a call, maybe do even a 2 call close. And then from here, what they do is, again, they go into one of two places, right? They either go towards a purchase or they go to die, which is like pretty unreasonable and is not something we want to optimize for. And so the issue comes that like there's the real opportunity sits in two places. I know I showed three. The real opportunity shows in number one, in this realm here, when somebody follows you and they get retargeted, you can retarget them with like content, stories, and basically just naturally nurture them infinite times. It doesn't really cost you anything, right? It doesn't cost you anything extra. And the second massive opportunity is the DMs, right? And so the DMs is really a place where they can engage with you and you can obviously like, they engage with you here, but then also in the DMs, you can reach back out to them and see like, hey, if they no show, hey, haven't seen you no showed, any reason for that? And because they think they're speaking to the personal brand or like the creator itself, yeah, you have a higher likelihood of rebooking people historically. And on top of that, if somebody, didn't buy, instead of dying, they immediately, you can hit them back up in the DMs. Yo, saw the call of X, Y, and Z went well. What made you not want to move forward? And you can objection handle. And it's such a powerful lever because here, the only way you can convince those people is if the owner himself is calling people. Maybe with AI now it's possible, but again, there's probably some legislator here. But with the DMs, they're just implied while I'm speaking to the owner itself. So the response rate is usually a lot higher. And people will tell you, hey, this is why I didn't buy. Here's my like issue. And as a result, you can push people through. So there shows a lot of difference already, right? But the key part is this. Most people have a very linear perspective of how a sales process looks like, right? They just think that, okay, cool. They find us here. Maybe here's like a discovery, right? Here's the discovery. And like, let's say it takes them like 2 days to discover us, right? And then it takes us maybe like, takes maybe another 3 days, right? Like, let's just say 3 days here, you know? And then basically like it takes them 3 days to send a DM, right? Let's make this like a DM. And then off of here, within that, they have, another 2 days to book a call, book call. And then by day, let's say 10, right? They have sales call. And then after that, they're like, all right, cool. You're either now a client or you're basically like, for lack of better terms, dead. Right. And so this is the big issue. The big issue is like people don't understand sales cycles in of itself, like how long a sales cycle can last. And they don't understand that like different people or different personas have different needs and like wants. So this whole thing is like a whole information is really, to me, is an information game, right? For me to go from like, I have no clue what this is, to being, oh, take my goddamn money. I might have like a few roadblocks. Some might be smaller, some might be bigger, some might be like massive. There's some small ones at the end, which might be logistical. But at the tail end of like every single one of them, that is a lack of like information. This might be like logistics question, right? This might be like a confidence question, but like for the most part, all of these things are like information gaps. Okay, I call them IG. And so basically what that means, like this linear view relies on, okay, here, this phase, we just need to have all the information, whether that be through retargeting ads, whether that be through YouTube content, whatever. You rely on them having all that information and then make a decision, and then either they make it great or they're dead. And this is the exact issue. Now, this is where what I call the three-headed dragon comes in. And it's honestly like my favorite funnel to run, especially in organic. So what we kind of do is we had this client, and he basically, what he decided to do is he really liked running webinars on a monthly basis, and then he started to do challenges. And on one of the challenges, we had very gnarly like data tracking. And so what actually came out after the challenge was kind of crazy to me even. So what came out afterwards when we looked at the data was that like almost a third of the buyers, who actually purchased, because like one of the record months, they had actually consumed multiple webinars. They had reached out numerous times through ManyChat inside of the DMs, and they'd attended 2 challenges. So we've basically seen that combined, they had like 22 hours of content consumed. So we're like, wow, this is actually like fairly significant, because it just shows that like a lot of people, they had followed us for a while, that had just taken so much longer to make a decision. Right. And so we basically call them like fence hopper. And so we've realized like, we obviously have our usual percentage, which is like people that just buy within like a 7-day window. They're like decision makers. But there's a bulk part of people that like were buyers, but just needed more time. Right. But we basically almost ignored them. And obviously, whenever people felt ignored, they wouldn't come back. And so we basically changed this whole approach. We've realized like there's really like 3 sales cycles when somebody enters our system. Right. And this is one is a 7-day cycle, another day, it's like it's a 30-day, you know, and then someone is a 90-day cycle. Okay. Sometimes it takes people a quarter, especially in like more higher ticket offer. It takes like a quarter to make stuff happen. What I've found is that like outside of 90 days, if somebody can't make a decision in 90 days, we don't want to optimize for them because then you're optimizing for like slow sales cycles, slow leads, which is just useless in of itself. And so basically what really ended up happening is we had 3 sales cycles. So first we had like the 7-day sales cycle, right? So to kind of point this out and kind of run it for you guys is if this is like a 90-day cycle, right? We would have this, we would have a 30-day cycle, and we would have a 7-day cycle. So this is 0, this will be 30, and let's make this 7. Obviously, maybe proportionally. But basically what would happen is, it's a reverse funnel almost, but if somebody would come in, right? A new lead comes in into our funnel, they traditionally go directly into the DMs. Okay. They send us a DM. Hey, I want to learn more. What we do is we usually send them a guide or something, and we try to push them through within a 7-day cycle. So if day 0 reflects the point at which they entered the DMs, we might try to give them some good feedback in like the first, let's say 2 days, and then here is really like, I would say like, nurture, you know? So we will nurture them, and then the remaining 5 is kind of like sales call, right? And like basically like pre-call, whatnot. If they don't buy, that's totally fine. But we almost put them all from an email and lead perspective into a list for our second sales cycle, which is a webinar. So once every single month, our clients, we kind of encourage them once every 1 or 2 months to host a webinar. Now, webinar, again, you kind of know what it is. It's basically like a 1 or 2 hour informational pitch where you kind of walk them through your origin story, give them tangible information of how XYZ business model changed your life, and then you land the pitch. And so what we would do is basically like after the 7-day thing, if they, obviously failed to buy in here, they didn't do anything here, we would just keep them on the email list, keep nurturing them with the email, and then, basically from day 25 until day 30 is where the webinar happens. We would then really hit them with like promotional material, like every single day to get them onto the webinar. And then within a 30-day cycle, they might have gone through DMs, they've consumed some material, either booked a call or not. And they've either had a call and didn't buy, or they didn't book a call, but then they've attended a webinar. So now, probably here, if you look at like information consumption, right here, they probably have had like 1 to 3 hours of info, of like YouTube videos or whatever. Then here they had like another 2 to 3 hours of info, right? So like at this point, they had like between 3 to 6 hours worth of information that they've consumed, which like, if you look at like statistics, that's already much higher likelihood of buying. Now, what happens is if they don't buy after the webinar, we're like, cool, sounds pretty good. What we do is we ascend them, which is our challenge. Okay. Once a quarter, one of our clients does it every second month. I prefer once a quarter because it's then a 90-day cycle. Once a quarter, we have host a 2 to 4 day challenge. The challenge, very similar to a webinar, is a bit more action-based, right? And it's focused on showing people how to kind of get started with like a business model, a pathway, you name it. And the whole goal behind it is like really for them to maximize the amount of time they spend. So if after 30 days, they obviously don't buy in this time frame, right? Then obviously we continuously nurture them. They obviously see our daily content, right? They might have even attend the second webinar for all I know, but really we push them towards this challenge. Obviously through emails, blasts, even in the DMs, we keep them awake. We run blasts like, hey, by the way, in case you haven't, we have non-buyers like showed but didn't buy as tags instead of ManyChat. And basically from there, really push them towards the challenge. What happens is on that challenge, every single session is between like 1 to 3 hours long. So they get like, another, let's say 3 through 12 hours. And so now at this point, they've consumed close to 20 hours worth of content, not factoring in like any of like the content, any of like the emails, any of like I don't even know how to craft this, but like any of like the texts. They've seen so much content. We're like at this point after 90 days, if they don't think that number one, the 3 sales that happened, If they don't think that number one, the vehicle is right for them to, escape the pain or achieve the result they want, if they don't think that the creator, the personal brand that they're watching is the right person to help them achieve that, number three, they don't believe that they are capable to make the result happen, then quite simply, we probably can't help them, or we don't want to optimize to help those type of people, because the best type of people, they take action based on that much information. And so the reason I love this system is because they don't see this, but like whenever they they get ascended, right? It's like, all right, cool. You start here, you start here, cool. We'll hit you into our like 7-day DMs. Oh, you didn't buy? Cool. Well, let's put you into our webinar. And well, if you don't buy after the webinar, then well, okay, no worries. We have a free challenge. What that's done is a few things. So, number one, which is obviously like very clear, is like conversions, right? We have seen much higher conversions in terms of if within a 90-day window we book X, Y, and Z calls. We don't count leads to do two call closes as like two calls, right? It just counts as one. Like if we have, 1,000 calls within, let's say, 3 months, right? Before we would maybe close, let's say 200, right? I don't want to just give you numbers as facts, I just estimate. We've seen that the overall conversions per XYZ calls have increased by nearly 40%. Because obviously now the same people that previously were just kind of like disregarded and like their journey really ended like here, right? They're now seeing that like, oh, this is awesome, right? I just got like a lot more like value out of it, and they convert later on. And so not only that, but also it doesn't really take as much effort. These are great conversion events for like newer leads as well. But because we set them up and we include older leads, we just get to convert leads that we didn't really know existed, right? But the second thing that was actually pretty cool was refunds. So we've actually seen a drastic decrease in refunds, or people wanting a chargeback, just those type of people, the unhappy customers. The reason for it is super simple. Because they've consumed up to 20 hours worth of content, they're now so certain with their decision that they're actually going to go take action, right? And the last thing, which is honestly probably every marketer's dreams, are testimonials. We have, especially for one client, he's in a sub real estate niche. His testimonials and student wins have drastically increased. And it's not because he revolutionized his fulfillment system. It's because the people who come in, they're so sold and they're so convinced of the opportunity and the creator and their ability to make it happen, that they take action, and their conviction actually helps them get results. So all in all, I just want to summarize this is I personally like having efficiency in businesses versus just leakages. Obviously, with your self-funnel paid ads, there's a lot of leakage, which you can minimize more with organic. And so, yeah, what we've already done is like the 3 liquidation events, which are obviously like number one, the DM setting in of itself are very efficient. And then number two, we have the webinars. They just help us kind of clean up those people or like further nurture them up. And then lastly, really the challenge. I kind of look at it from a broader perspective. It's every single month, on a 3-month time horizon, we kind of get like, every month we get like little spills that weren't converted, right? It's almost like we have like little raspberries are growing, little berries are growing, and we just haven't been able to harvest them. And then obviously every 3 months, we take all of them and we throw them in a big old bucket where they're all in now, alongside with the newbies. And then we just kind of give them a chance to liquidate. And then after 3 months, they might just spill here and there, but we're just kind of like, cool. You guys didn't convert. Cool. At this point, we're okay with forgetting you guys, because it's like, if you convert, great. If not, that's okay too. But that way we have really conscious efforts to always accumulate more sales, which that helps us get really outsized returns, because we're making money off of, leads that we haven't really paid for again. And so it just helps us with marketing as well, and kind of just overall being efficient with stuff, which obviously over time, when you look in like a ROAS perspective, if you do this over like a 2-3 year period, you're obviously always going to see a gradual increase, assuming you do a good job on the front end. Because obviously now in this month here, if you really look at it on like a month to month basis, right, you have leads that came in here that are converting into this month, vice versa. You have all these leads, small fraction, that compound month over month over month. It means the longer you do it, the better it's going to be. So I hope this kind of gave you some value and gave you some really good perspective on like how you can, increase your overall conversions without being reliant on like, oh, more leads, more money spent, more marketing spend, but actually being efficient and making the most out of what you do, which gives you a higher ROAS, as you guys saw, can even help you get less refunds and better client results, all which helps you as a company to be more profitable and make more sales in the long run. So with that said, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, leave me some good old feedback or drop me topics you want me to cover up next, and I'll see you in the next one.